So are you ready to PR yourself? We'll remove the mystery from all things PR, and we'll discuss everything from our top strategies to tips and tricks and everything that you can utilize to further enhance your brand or your message. I've been in media, I'm a journalist, and I'm also a publicist. I am Leah Frazier, CEO of Think3 Media, and your host for PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. Let's go. And welcome back to another episode of PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. I'm your host, Leah Frazier, and I am excited about this episode today because you know what? We're just going to beat this dead horse. We are dedicating yet another episode as we're in another year to podcasting. I can't tell you guys enough. I talk to expert after expert after expert. What are the trends? One of the top episodes of all time on PR Yourself with Leah Frazier is with Dara Bush of 5WPR. So go back a couple episodes and we talk about what the top trends were for 2022. And one of those trends was podcasting. If you go way a couple seasons before Dara came on, we had Eric Sue come on, which he's one of the top marketers in the world. And he was releasing his book. And I asked him on the episode, what are you doing to get the word out? And he says, I'm going on a podcast tour. I'm not doing traditional media. I'm not trying to go on TV. I'm going on podcast to get the word out on my book. And it's incredible to me, the power of this medium. So I'm so excited about today's episode. We actually recorded it, and I'm super embarrassed to say, a while ago. I'm having Brandy Whalen on. You hear those commercials and you hear us talking about Kitcaster and how you can get started with them if you're trying to do and go speak on podcasts and how they can help you. So I'm excited that we actually have Brandy on with Kitcaster so she can actually give you her spin and her expertise. So again, I know we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about podcasts, but it is an exceptional way to build traction, and I think you need to hear it from Brandy's mouth versus mine on what it actually does for her clients, because she actually had a media company before she started Kitcaster. And then once she saw what podcasts were actually doing and how much traction appearing on podcasts were doing for small businesses, entrepreneurs, her clients, and then the reposting of those podcasts and how it helped and how it leveraged their brands, now she helps other business owners, brands, individuals to achieve that same success. So we are back again. Now, let me tell you what I'm seeing as far as what is a little bit different from when I began preaching to you guys about PRing yourself on podcasts. This is my one thing I want to ask you to do in 2023. And I have a very good reason for it, okay? So if you don't remember anything else from this episode, and I hope you do because Brandy's a gem and she knows what she's talking about. But from my end, okay? If you're going to pitch yourself for podcast this year, which you will, because ain't no way I'm spending all this time dropping these gems for y'all and y'all ain't gonna do it. And I'm from Texas, so I say y'all a lot, so sorry. Okay. Now we're in the realm of content creators who have podcasts such as myself, where it is super valuable on our end to not only just deliver an audio file for our interviews. So you may be listening on Apple or on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio. This podcast is all over the place, Amazon, wherever you're listening, right? It's super essential for all of us to deliver video. So not only am I recording the podcast and it's going on the audio portion for people who want to ride in their cars, or maybe you're on the airplane and you're tuning in, whatever it is, but it's essential that people see us. It needs to live on YouTube. I've taken my podcast a step further, and Brandy, if you're listening, I'm sorry, this was way after we did our interview. And now I live stream those episodes that are critical, where I know, oh, they're about to come and drop some gems for y'all. So then on that episode, not only does it go audio, not only do we deliver video, but then we live stream so that you guys can interact in real time. So I do have episodes that live stream to LinkedIn We live stream to 3 Facebook pages. We live stream to Twitter. And I believe there's one other medium. Oh, it goes live to YouTube. And then the content lives there forever. You guys are there asking my guests questions and comments in real time, and we're answering them during the episode. So I've taken it to the next level. Now, why is that important? The video aspect and researching when you're trying to figure out what podcast you want to appear on, the video aspect is important because if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur or a startup founder, and you're just dipping your toe in the PR game, or maybe have an established business, maybe you're a veteran, but you haven't gotten the coverage on a traditional PR level as you should have. So like, let's say you haven't really done many TV segments, you haven't really done much broadcast radio, then these podcasts are essential for you. But not just audio, video. Why? I can't tell you how many times I have pitched a client that we're in the process of building their brand. We're in the process of diving deep into building their brand as a thought leader, and they have absolutely no video on the web. And not only do they have no video on the web, they have no video evidence of them being interviewed. They have no video or audio evidence of what they're like or their personality is like in an interview. And this is important because you're going to come across TV producers that you pitch with your incredible story, but they don't know you. And they're going to respond back, do you have, footage of you doing a TV interview before? And what has worked for me and what I've done for my clients, for those where this is their first time, I say, we don't necessarily have TV footage, but here's this great podcast interview so you can get a great feel for her personality, his or her personality, or how they like to be interviewed, or how they would answer questions on the fly. And then I would send them the YouTube link. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but at least we have the evidence. So as you listen to this episode, and if you get excited about going on a podcast tour or pitching yourself for many, 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 many podcasts, as you're interacting or as you're researching, see if the podcast host goes a step further and has a visual presence where when you're being interviewed, 9 times out of 10, they'll do it probably on StreamYard or Zoom or some medium like that. Those should be high priority. You want as much evidence as possible as you're PRing yourself of how people can go out and watch you. They can watch your body language. They can watch your facial features. You don't want resting you-know-what face the entire time. We don't want people like that on TV. So they want to see what you're like in an actual interview. Now, don't count out the folks that only have audio only. We're still in the magic of SEO. We want your name out there as much as possible, but go a step further and research whether they have that video component. So that way, when you're trying to go on Good Day Washington, Good Day Fox, as it is here in Dallas, Good Morning Texas, Good Morning America, and they say, do you have any videos of you speaking? Then you can say, yes, I do. And you can send them about 10 because you've listened to this episode and you took your podcasting pitching seriously by seeing whether or not that host actually produces a video portion in addition to the audio portion of their podcast. But again, I want to say, don't cut them off. Go on as many as you can, but you definitely want to give more priority and definitely research those that actually have a video or live streaming component a little bit more seriously as you're building your press kit or your PR portfolio. Okay. So I know I rambled a little bit longer than I wanted, but I had to say that before I brought Brandy on, because as we move forward in 2023, and I was giving that advice out in 2021, 2022. So I'm just reiterating it because I saw more so last year, more producers asking for that video evidence as they were booking segments. So just that's free advice. That's a pro tip. I hope you take it. And once we get back, after you hear a word from none other than Kitcaster, we'll bring Brandy on. Please get your pen, paper, pad. You guys know how much It means to me when you take copious notes because these experts are really giving you the dish. Take those notes, and we'll be back with Brandy Whalen from Kitcaster and Whalen Media as soon as we get back from this break.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Welcome back to another episode of PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. I say this every single time, and I really mean it. I am so excited because today you guys are going to learn all things about podcasting. I've been telling you for a very long time that this is a strategy, especially small businesses and entrepreneurs, that you have to have with any marketing and PR campaign. But you don't listen to me, so I decided I'm going to reach out to the experts. Just saying. And today on the show, I'm so excited because I have Brandy Whalen. Not only does she have a PR agency, Whalen Media, she's also the co-founder of Kitcaster, and they send me amazing people to put on this podcast all the time. So I just thought it was so cool that your folks reached out, and here I am talking to you. So you PR'd yourself right onto my podcast as the podcast strategist. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. I teach meditation, so I just got out of teaching a class, and I'm very high energy, but I'm super zen right now.
I love that. Do you teach meditation every day?
No. I have too much to do, so it's just
I am impressed.
I figure people need it just as much as I do. And so now it's something that I can offer to folks. I graduate actually with my certification next month. So.
Gosh, congratulations. That is so wonderful.
Thank you. But I'm not here to talk about me. Brandy, I want to know more. First off, let's start off because I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, Whalen Media came before Kitcaster.
Yes, you are right. Yes, I had a boutique PR firm for about 6 years, really focused in on financial and technology, more B2B side of things. So kind of just doing traditional public relations and seeing how effective podcasting, putting my clients on podcast interviews, and they would get done and they were like, whoa, that was not only a good time, like I actually had fun conversating with the host, but when they threw it up on their company LinkedIn, their personal LinkedIn, they had so much more traction from that podcast interview than they did any other media that they were doing at that point in time. So it was pretty incredible to see.
So then at what point, and we're going to definitely go back to that. So then at what point did you say, there's something here, so now I'm going to start Kitcaster, which helps people get on podcasts, and you guys, like I said, you guys reached out to me several times with great guests, and you helped them to get featured. So when did that kind of come into play?
Yeah, so it was about 2.5 years ago. There was a colleague of mine here in Denver, and he ran a marketing firm and had a local podcast. So we were just toying around with the idea of starting something that focused in on podcasts. And for a hot second, we thought about podcast production and kind of working it on the side of like, if a company wants to start a podcast, we would kind of help facilitate that. Then I was like, why don't we just tap into our expertise that we already have and focus on getting those clients, executives on podcasts, see if they like it, see if it's something, not everyone loves talking, but the clients that we work with, of course, they could talk forever. That's medium of choice. But so we decided to go all in on getting people. We're basically the conduit between our clients and a podcast and facilitating those interviews.
So with your people, did it take much convincing and saying like coming to Kitcaster, like as far as making podcasting a part of your PR strategy? Did you have to do much convincing, or do they come to the table already knowing the value in podcasting from a PR perspective?
So people are starting to understand there's less education that's happening now, but in the beginning, yes, it really took, it's unfortunate the way that it happened, but during the pandemic when people were unable they were unsure of how to get in front of the audiences that are meaningful and impactful to them and their business. Mm-hmm. Is when we really saw a huge spike in our business because it allowed this vehicle for them to continue to be able to get in front of people, to tell their story, to talk about whatever disruptive technology that they're bringing to the world, and without having to go to a physical location to do that. So that's really where we saw the turning point with our company. And now I think that podcasts are so mainstream that most everyone understands the value in it. There's not a lot of education that needs to happen as much.
So what do you say to those folks, though, that they know it's mainstream? So obviously they see the value in it, but it's like, okay, there's a million podcasts out there. How do I know that I'm going to be like that person where they shared it on the LinkedIn personal and on the company and they saw more traction there? How am I weighing when there's millions upon millions of podcasts out there?
Yeah, that is actually a hurdle for us. And there are, last I checked, I believe 2.6 million podcasts that are
and growing and growing
every day. I always say it's like the 2021 blog explosion. It's like how blogging was 15, 20 years ago. It's
Don't get me started, Brandy. Don't get me started. I got a whole TED talk on it. Don't get me started.
So, it is to us, and this in PR. Yeah, of course, like we are going to work to get you on those big name podcasts, but really the benefit comes from talking to some of those niche podcasts that are speaking directly to your potential customer and are able to ask you questions that are impactful to you and really dig into your product, especially if you have something that's rather complex. Let's say you have some sort of artificial intelligence solution and you go on an AI podcast and they can speak your language. So for us, and when we're trying to educate potential clients and try to walk them through the value, if you have, especially a service or a product that has a longer sales cycle, and there's a lot of education that needs to happen to your consumer, podcasts are a great way to do that. And especially if you're talking to somebody who has the knowledge base to lead you down the path that are answering questions that a potential client would have, so they can have a listen to the podcast. They have a full understanding of what you do by the time that you get on the phone with them.
I love how you laid that out because it's a very strategic process. And I think sometimes people think the more you go on, the better. Whereas it should be just as strategic as you're trying to figure out, okay, what magazines speak to my audience, or, what television news show or whatever that is. It's the same with podcasts. And I don't see a lot of people, or that I am aware of, that really take the time to figure out who those podcasts are. They're just like, oh, I like the Breakfast Club. Let me go on the Breakfast Club. But does the Breakfast Club really speak to your audience?
Yeah.
You just know that they're popular.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that people have that misconception and they kind of look at the shows that they like or the shows that they feel like have the most listenership. They may have a huge listenership, but they may not have a single listener that actually would be interested in what you have to offer, what you have to talk about. So it's it's one of those things. I don't know how many times we've been asked to be on Joe Rogan's show, and it's that always gets a laugh out of everyone.
That is hilarious. Well, I do want to talk a little bit too about if there's any best practices as far as outreach. Now, obviously, what you have built takes away the pain and the struggle of sifting through 2.6 million plus and counting podcasts that are out there on the web. But how does somebody go in developing a strategy and then having successful outreach?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to outreach, it's just like public relations, right? It's figuring out what is the podcast about? What can our client bring to conversation that is of value to this podcast? Talking about something that maybe hasn't covered before, or perhaps a different angle. So when we're conducting outreach, and when your listeners are conducting outreach, making sure that the talking points make sense. And you know this from people coming on your show. Nobody wants to listen to a 30-minute advertisement. They want to hear your story. No, they want to know, why are you doing what you're doing? What did you see in the industry that was failing? And how is what you're doing now kind of filling this gap? So those are some of the things that how we approach the outreach, and how I think all outreach should be approached. And then when it comes time to finding the right shows, this is where it's a little bit of a beast. There are platforms out there, just like in the PR world, where you have Cision, Meltwater, Muckruck, and those particular solutions haven't taken the full plunge into podcasting. Mm-hmm. But there are some sources out there that are helpful in finding the right contact, understanding kind of in a glimpse what this podcast is about. But quite frankly, it is a little bit like the Wild West. And we've been building our own CRM platform system that is our database of all the podcasts that we've worked with or want to work with, and all the information we need to make us successful in that.
And honestly, I think to everything that you just said, you have a great point. There was someone that I interviewed a couple of seasons ago that was launching a book, and he was like one of the top digital marketers in the world that I had on. And he's like, I'm launching this book. And they pretty much threw out any traditional PR strategy with a book launch and he said, I'm just doing a podcast tour. He says, I'm doing 200 podcasts talking about my book. Yours is like number whatever I was. And I was like, I can't get mad at that. So then I went back to my clients and I'm trying to tell them, oh, you should consider a podcast tour. I was like, that's genius, because you don't know if, first off, the distribution is off the chain. Like if I'm distributed in like maybe 10 plus places, and, I also dump it on YouTube, or I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and you do that 200 times, your digital footprint is like so incredibly ridiculous than you trying to set up something at Barnes & Noble and sign books. Because it's so genius. You just drive them straight to Amazon or wherever the book is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get them excited, right? It's like instead of going on a book tour where you have to physically be in 50 different locations, you go on 200 different podcasts, that impact and reach, and you're essentially doing that, right? You're getting people excited about what you have to say. And then at the end, you just drop the call to action. Find us here, order the book here. It's a great way to just gain traction. And SEO, like you said, I mean, the distribution, and if you have a savvy podcast host, which most are, you know how time consuming this is. If you're going to invest this time, you're going to make it impactful.
Yeah.
So it's a great medium.
So you guys are doing it. You're smart. You got in there, you saw a need, you fulfilled a need, and clearly had no idea that the world was going to evolve in the way that it has.
Yeah.
And that many businesses were going to have to depend more so than ever on digital mediums to marketing and PR. So where do you see things heading? Like, where do you see things as far as podcasting, the future of audio? Like, what should business owners be thinking about for the future?
I think it's really interesting because the trends in audio, I mean, even during the pandemic, I think podcasts were launching. You saw big household brand names investing lots of money in the world of podcasting, Spotify being one of them that went really all in. And then we had this time in our life where we kind of everything halted and we weren't commuting, which is when people were mostly listening to audio. But then we started doing house projects and doing other things that you may want a pleasant distraction. So you can, walk around with your headset, with your AirPods in, and maybe you're mowing the lawn or retiling your bathroom, but you're gonna binge listen to an entire season of a podcast, or maybe the beginning of a podcast that you stumble upon. So, I think I think people are just tuned in. I mean, how many times do you walk around, even in the grocery store, and you're looking around and half the people have AirPods in? And I think most of those people are probably listening to some sort of audio content. And then I think that video actually took a backseat for a minute, but I think during the pandemic, it came back front and center because people were at home in front of their computers. And now I think we're going to strike this really nice balance between video and audio. And I've seen a lot of podcast hosts transition over to video as well. So they'll capture the audio, they're publishing it on all the audio platforms that they're connected with, but then they're also publishing it on YouTube. So I think that there is
y'all can't see me, example. But unless you're on YouTube, but Brandy, yes. Thank you for making me feel like a genius. Just keep talking. Keep talking.
You are a genius. Yes. And it's a trend that we're seeing. And I think that will continue. And I think big brands, I was actually listening to, because for entertainment, of course, I listen to our clients' podcast, but then I also listen just for fun. I love murder mysteries.
Oh, me too.
It's so good. I think a lot of people feel that way. So I'm like a cliche in that. But I was listening to one last night and it was brought to you, they're like, this show is brought to you by Salesforce. And
really?
It wasn't that there wasn't a pre-roll, there wasn't a mid-roll. It was just like the show is brought to you by a huge name. So that that Salesforce paid a lot of money to have that content be branded from them. So I think we'll see more and more of that. And people being just really thoughtful about getting more sophisticated with the content that they're putting out there.
I think that's utterly genius. And one of the things that I tell my clients a lot too is I was like, you have to think about it, not just in terms of distribution, but these audio files hopefully live forever. So someone can listen to this podcast in 2030, if it's still out there on the internet, and hear presented by Salesforce. It's like you have this never-ending ad across all these different channels with all these little digital footprints on the web forever. Who wouldn't want to advertise in that way? That's so smart.
Yeah. And I think it kind of ties into a podcast that I listened to of yours just around influencer marketing. I mean, podcasts open up the door for a different group of influencers. I mean, I've heard you talk about a CBD product on your podcast, and like we want to buy from people we trust. And you like with earnest, right? Like you are like, I'm
Yeah.
using this. My dog is going to be using this. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what we want, as consumers, we want to trust people. And I think that you'll see more and more of that as well, just with podcast hosts being like fully invested in products that they love and they're sharing with their audience.
Did you know that podcasts are a great way to grow your personal and business brand voice? Listen, here's a secret. We all want to feel connected to brands we buy from. So what better way to humanize a brand than through sharing your story on a podcast? Think about it now. You in bright lights and on PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. Hey, it can happen. Listen, Kitcaster is a podcast booking agency. They're one of the friends of the show that specializes in developing real human connections through podcast appearances. So if you're an expert in your field, you have a unique story to share, or you have an interesting point of view, it is time for you to explore the world of podcasting with Kitcaster. You can expect a completely customized concierge service from their staff of communication experts. Kitcaster is your secret weapon in podcasting for business. Listen, your audience is waiting to hear from you. Don't make them wait too much longer. So what you're going to do, you're going to head to kitcaster.com. That is kitcaster.com/PR yourself to apply for a special offer for friends of this podcast. And listen, don't delay. Get with it today. A lot of your amazing guests that you guys love so much on this podcast came from Kitcaster. Don't delay. Next time it needs to be you. Well, we talked about trust, and I trust you. And we're talking about a murder mystery. To give me some other podcasts that maybe we should be listening to right now. Like what's some other ones that maybe we need to tap into that are your faves?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's been a little while since I've just like indulged for my own pleasure. But I don't know if you listened to Dolly Parton's America, but it was amazing.
No, I need to listen to that one.
Yes, it has been out for a while, but that's a good one to dive into. I also, because we have a lot of clients that do interesting things that I just like cryptocurrency, which
Yes, I need that.
So I can, I don't have any top of mind, but I've been listening to some cryptocurrency podcasts just to like educate myself, try to understand.
Well, I need one ASAP because the Bitcoin dropped and I'm like, keep your money there. But I'm like, somebody tell me what the experts are doing because it literally dropped so much this week. It's like, oh, but it's all good. But no, that's interesting. Okay. What are some, you have any other ones? Like, is there any true crime or?
Oh yeah. Else? So the Murdoch murders, I don't know. Ooh. That's the one I've been tuning into recently. That's the one that's sponsored by Salesforce. So they got in on that game. So that's a really good one. Yeah. Ooh. So that's what I've been listening to.
I love it. Don't get me started. I am the type that will go and listen to the true crime ones and sit in the car and then transfer it into the house and not watch TV until I'm done. Like that's what I did with the Black Dahlia one.
My gosh, that was so good.
Oh my God, I finished it in 2 days. It was like I was waking up in the middle of the night, like, okay, let me just. It was crazy.
Amazing, right? I'm like, why hasn't anyone made a movie?
Yeah.
Wait,
I think they did with Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, did they?
And they actually, now this is funny because my friend from California, they actually had Scarlett in the room where the Black Dahlia stayed, like the apartment in Cali. And apparently there was some creepy stuff going on there. Like ghost wise. But yeah, she did tell me chills. That. Yeah. So there is a movie. So I gotta catch that. But
yeah.
It's crazy.
I know. It's so crazy. So crazy. What other podcasts are you listening to?
Speaking of cryptocurrency. Oh, well, murder mystery. So I left that one and I tried to go over back onto Serial and it just hasn't been the same since season 1 or that first one.
I know.
I couldn't get through any of the other ones. I'm like, So I haven't really found one that I really, really like, but recently I did a road trip and I found Lucille Ball. There was like a Hollywood type podcast where they had lost audio files, or they weren't lost, but they hadn't released them before, for when Lucille Ball had her own radio show, and she would interview like Dean Martin and all like the Hollywood celebs from her day. And they would be in her backyard, just like sipping whatever. And so it's just kind of cool because this was kind of, podcasting back then. They just put it on the radio and someone found the files, and it's Lucille going on set of their movies and they're talking like they're friends. And just, if anybody loves I Love Lucy or just Lucille Ball herself, like it is amazing. And it's just like transporting you back in time to the conversations that they had. She interviewed Dean Martin's wife at the time. How does she take care of the kids? And it's like the gender roles have changed. So it's just really like fascinating. And I love Lucy. So
that is incredible. That is amazing. Could you imagine stumbling upon that?
No. And I think it's someone in her family that gave them the green light to go ahead and release the episodes and all the audio files of this radio show that Lucy had. I think it was with her husband after Desi. And so it's just like, if anybody is in love with like Hollywood glam back in that day and Lucy, it is such a treat to just listen in on the conversations. And I did. I drove back to Dallas from Atlanta, and half the way back, that's what I listened to.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for that.
You're amazing. So we're wrapping up on time. I want people, for business owners, and I hear this all the time, love your podcast, gives me all the woo-woo, but I don't want to do this stuff myself. So if they're listening and they're saying, love it, Leah, but I don't have the time, talent, or resources to search podcasts to go on and pitch myself, how can they submit themselves, or even have you guys consider having them be a part of Kitcaster?
Yeah, so I'm always open to have a conversation, even if you want to just pick my brain around podcasting. My email is Brandy, Brandy, at Kitcaster, Kitcaster. You can reach out to me anytime. And also on our website, there's an intake form there if you want to just go straight there and find out some more information. So it's fantastic because we do everything. You just show up and then we take care of all the rest, because it takes a lot of time. And you probably know this, Leah, even just from getting guests on your show. It's a lot of coordination, and it's a lot that you don't really consider. You're like, oh, I'll just reach out to a couple podcasts, but it's like following up with people, getting them the information they need to have a good conversation with you. So I'm always open just to have a conversation with anyone who just wants some tips or is considering working with a booking agency.
And I would definitely, I highly recommend you guys. You guys are great at pitching. It's short, sweet, to the point, but it hits the highlights, and they target it directly to what my podcast is about. And I love that. So if I have holes, and which I always do, and I'm looking for guests, I feel like they have the pitching down to a T, which some of you guys struggle with. So why not just have somebody else do it for you and do it successfully? So I'll have everything that you said, Brandy, contact information, and also the links to Kitcaster in the caption for everybody. And is there any social media they can follow you at?
Yeah, we're on LinkedIn. We have a pretty active Instagram page. We just started a TikTok account, which should be interesting.
I thought about doing TikTok from a PR perspective. I was like, oh, people gonna get mad. Let me not.
We just decided to go ahead and just jump into that world, and Facebook. So we're on all of the social platforms, and we do have a great blog and do some audio, because we're talkers. So we do conversations, just educating folks on different aspects of podcasting. So we have the little audio files, and then we have the written content on our blog as well.
Well, awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandy, for
Yeah.
being a part of PR Yourself today. And I'm so happy that you took time and gave us all these amazing tips and tricks. Like I said, all of that info, you guys, will be in the caption, and it'll also be up on the blog on PR Yourself with leahfrazier.com. You know what to do if you like this episode. Subscribe. But some of you guys are subscribing, but you're not leaving me the rating and review so that Brandy can send more amazing guests my way. So leave a rating, leave us a review, share this one out. This has amazing tips and tricks that hasn't ever been discussed before on PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. And have a great and amazing week. And until next time.